Love and loss lead us to become champions for a cause we never expected to face. My guest today is Mary Lou Falcone, an internationally renowned classical music publicist and strategist. She has spent 5 decades shaping the careers of prominent artists and institutions. However, it's her personal story that brings an added layer to the depths of her illustrious career. Faced with her partner's diagnosis of Lewy Body Dementia, Mary Lou found herself in the most challenging role of her life, that of a caregiver. Her journey through love, loss, and caregiving has led her to become an advocate for Lewy Body Dementia awareness, turning her personal struggle into a beacon of hope and inspiration for others. Throughout our conversation, Mary Lou will share her insights from her book, I Didn't See It Coming: Scenes of Love, Loss, and Lewy Body Dementia. She shares how her early life experiences prepared her for caregiving, the challenges she also faced while caring for her late husband Nicky, and why she chose to share her story with the world. We talk about Nicky's life, the profound loss, and the awakening to advocacy. Mary Lou shares insight into the complex and often misunderstood world of Lewy Body Dementia, a condition that affects millions yet remains in the shadows. We explore not only just the medical aspects of Lewy Body Dementia, but the deeply personal experience that comes with caring for someone living with this condition. We talk about the importance of spreading awareness, the difficulties that caregivers face, and the resources available for those living with Lewy Body Dementia. This episode promises not just to be an exploration of this, but a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the human spirit in the face of adversity. It's been an honor to meet Mary Lou and have her share her story with us. This is a conversation you do not want to miss. Here is my interview with Mary Lou Falcone. Mary Lou, it was wonderful to read your book, and it was even more exciting that now I'm able to meet you in person. Thank you for taking the time to visit with us today.
And thank you, Nicole, for inviting me.
Yes, you've had a fascinating career in the classical music industry, and you also have a whole full life that you've been witnessing people that you love and the caregiving component. How did you come to this place of writing this book that I think when I read you said that you would never write?
That is correct.
Yeah,
And as I say in my first sentence, never say never,
right.
because I did say I would never write a book, meaning I would never write a tell-all book about my
Mm,
clients in the classical music industry, because that's sacred. You know, people
right.
entrust you with information, you don't violate it.
Yeah.
But life changed when my husband, Nicky Zan, was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. And I cared for Nicky until his death. And toward the end of his life, he said to me one day, Mary Lou, you have to write. And I thought to
Mm,
myself, write what? And then Nicky passed, and it became so clear, Nicole, that I had to write about the journey,
mm,
but the entire journey. So I went back to my caregiving self at age 10. My father had a massive stroke when I was 10 years old. And that was life changing for the entire family. It's a family that was Italian American. We did not talk about things outside the home. That is, everything was private, and a lot of people didn't even know what was going on internally. I became the caregiver for my dad. I was the oldest of three children, became my dad's caregiver, and that meant also helping train him in the area of speech.
mm,
He was in rehab. The rehab center was wonderful. They got him to walk again, but when the insurance money ran out, they did not continue with the speech therapy, and the speech was not back. And so they said, "You have a very bright now 11-year-old. She can work with you." And they trained me how to do it. But you know, a child should never be working with a parent in that way, because the child thinks, I can make this happen. You know, I
yeah.
can do it. And then you can't, because it is impossible. During that period, I also care for my younger brother and sister. My mother held down three jobs to keep our family together. but we were a closely knit, loving family, and the love never waned. Emotionally, however, it was very hard to show your emotions because everybody was keeping the stiff upper lip and making it work. Everybody did their part. I discovered music, and I discovered that when I sang, the audience members, especially the adults, would weep. And I thought, well, this is kind of interesting because emotionally I'm allowed to share, I'm allowed to let it all come out, but not with words. I don't have to say it. I can just feel it and use it. That stood me in really good stead as I got into my early adult life, went to the Curtis Institute of Music on scholarship because my voice got me in,
Wonderful.
sang for about 8 years professionally while teaching, and then discovered that I really wanted to be behind the scenes again as a caregiver. A caregiver for what? A caregiver for artists, actually promoting their careers, allowing them to have the spotlight while I stayed behind the scenes, which I really did love. And this fall now marks 50 years in the
Wow.
public relations business. Yeah.
Wow. That's
And
incredible.
then, of course, the ultimate in caregiving for Nicky
Yeah. You mentioned how music is your, or was and is still
is
your passport to the world. And I
it
thought that
is
was a beautiful description of how that transpired in your life.
Well, it was my lifeline. It was also Nicky's lifeline.
Mm,
Nicky had been a rocker in the 1950s as a teenager. He had been a rock and roll idol. Everyone says, "Oh, sure." Everybody had their garage bands and their basement bands, but no, Nicky was on the road with the likes of Johnny Cash, Patsy Cline, Jerry Lee Lewis. So he was a for real rocker who, at the age of 21, decided that, you know what, enough of this rock and roll. I'm going to become a major artist, or I'm going to become an artist. I don't think he added the word major. I think I added that.
yeah.
But indeed, he did become a major artist. His career was well known internationally as an illustrator, as a cartoonist, as a caricaturist, and as a painter. As a matter of fact, his work today hangs in the Victoria and Albert Museum, where the legend there says that he was the inspiration for Roy Lichtenstein.
Wow.
So
Wow.
we both had very interesting and full and amazing careers while we traveled the world together.
Isn't that something? It was really fun to read about that in detail. So, everyone will have to read the book for many reasons, but
Thank you.
seeing the detail. But also, I love how that you talk about how he was very, is humble the word, or he didn't want to brag about himself?
Never. No,
Yes.
humble is
Yeah.
exactly the word. Nicky was an entertainer, a born entertainer. He would make the room just spin and laugh and be full of joy, but he never talked about himself.
Mm,
He would go to the piano and wail the rock and roll, even as an older person. But you would never get from him how celebrated he was as an
mm.
artist. When Nicky passed, the couple of hundred notes that I got all said basically the same thing. He made us feel special.
Wow. Isn't that a gift?
Isn't that a gift? And
Yeah,
what a legacy.
it
What a
really
beautiful
is.
legacy.
I love that you honor his art also throughout the book, right? Each
Yes.
picture with each chapter.
Thank you for mentioning
Yeah.
that. In the 1980s, early 80s, Nicky developed a game called the Answer Deck. It took 20 years to get it produced, but 20 years later, it was produced in the early 2000s and sold 100,000 copies. And it was really a celebrated fortune-telling game for the layperson.
Mm,
He devised it, he created it, and he drew the 73 cards. When I was writing this book, I walked one day into our bedroom and it was like the light bulb, the proverbial light bulb went on over my head. And I thought, wait a minute. These cards, the drawings, evoke emotion.
mm.
I wonder if I could actually pair an emotion with a card
Wow.
that really represented each chapter. My chapters are quite short on
Mm,
purpose. I think people want concise and short chapters that they can read and then put down.
yeah.
And so I thought, well, if I could evoke emotion starting that chapter, I wonder what that might look like. So I took the cards, I laid them all out. I needed 50 of the 73 because there are 50 chapters.
Mm.
And I'm here to tell you, Nicole, that it took me 30 minutes to match an emotion with the
Wow.
chapter.
I got
A
goosebumps
car,
because it was so clear, right? 30
yeah,
minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I never changed the cards.
Wow.
That was it.
Yeah. You
It
just
was so
knew.
organic.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe that Mr. Nicky was sitting on my
Oh,
shoulder, just
yeah.
absolutely there with me because it was almost like automatic writing.
Yeah. Oh my
So
goodness. I
yeah,
bet. And you're so true in your description of the chapter and having it be short and concise. I liked that. I felt it was so easy to read in the sense that I mean, I made it through the book. I think in a few hours I read the whole thing. And I loved that it was from that first person perspective. It invited us into the story. I felt like I think good story transports us to those moments.
I do too. And I made the choice to not just write in my voice, but I wrote in Nicky's voice and I wrote
Mm,
in the voices
yeah,
of people who had touched my life in very meaningful
yeah.
ways. And it was to pay homage to them too.
I could see that. I could see that. So, what about Nicky? And I know you describe and share about his life so well in the book and the realness and the detail. Is there anything that you want to make sure that you share about him today that as we go into our conversation around Lewy body dementia and caregiving and all of that?
Yeah.
I want to be able to give you the space to do that.
Yeah. I think Nicky can be described best in the three things that he said to me when he was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia.
Mm,
And those three things in the waiting room were, in this order: I have always wanted to meet your father, and now I will have my chance.
wow.
That was Nicky's way of letting me know that he understood that this disease was fatal, that he was dying. The second thing that he said has made me smile every day since he said it and every day since he's gone, which is, Mary Lou, we have had a great run. We cannot be sad.
Mm, wow.
Beautiful words to
Yeah.
live by.
Yeah.
And the third thing was a cautionary tale for all caregivers, which was, please help me to keep my dignity.
Yes.
And that sort of says it all.
It really does. I love how you share how you are not only started your caregiving at age 10, and then it continued throughout your life, and then when you met Nicky, and then in your career, the caregiver for artists. I love that. I might adopt that because I feel with my role with the podcast, I'm caregiving and I'm elevating all of my guests, right? And supporting them
That's right.
behind the scenes, which is what I love to be able to celebrate you and your work and what everyone's doing for our caregivers. So that's going to stick with me. I haven't heard that before, so I appreciate your insight into that. And there's so much that we are going to talk about in terms of not only your childhood experience and what shaped that, but for our listeners who may not be familiar with what Lewy body dementia is and how it differs from Alzheimer's disease. Let's start
Let's
there.
start there. Yeah,
Let's
absolutely,
start there.
absolutely. First of all, Lewy body dementia is not rare. 1.4 million people in the United States have Lewy body dementia.
Wow.
It is a neurodegenerative disease which affects both cognitive reasoning impairment
Mm-hmm.
and also affects motor skills, especially when it's coupled with Parkinson's disease. So, Lewy body dementia is not dissimilar from Alzheimer's, however, and often misdiagnosed because it's misdiagnosed as either Alzheimer's or it's misdiagnosed as a psychiatric disorder or it's misdiagnosed as Parkinson's. So, Lewy body can also coexist with Parkinson's and it can coexist with Alzheimer's also.
Mm.
But pure Lewy body dementia there is not a one size fits all. You don't have, everybody doesn't have all the same symptoms, but generally speaking, what you see is that differs from Alzheimer's. You see the decline, the cognitive decline, but you see a resurgence. You see a fluctuation.
Mm,
So your loved one may look at you one day and say, I don't know who you are, but an hour later will absolutely know who you are, and everything will be back to some form of normality. That's number one. Number two is that people with Lewy body dementia have REM sleep behavior disorder. And that's when you're sleeping and you're dreaming like you're running down a hill.
mm,
And instead of just dreaming it, you will actually physically be acting it out. Your legs will be moving, or you'll dream you're punching somebody, and you actually will be punching someone. So that's the second part. And the third part of it is the whole cognitive side of it, which
mhm.
just, dissipates slowly.
Yeah.
I think that those are the main differences. With Alzheimer's, as you know, you go downhill very slowly.
Mhm.
Your cognitive ability is waning, but slowly, and never really comes back.
Right, right.
So,
I like how you reference, you said if you've met one person with Lewy body, you've just met one person. That
right.
there is so many different, it shows up differently for different people. And I'm sure that that's what leads to that misdiagnosis, right? You talk about, okay, the statistics 1.4 million people. Why do you think it's often misdiagnosed and there isn't as much known about it as compared to the general term we use as Alzheimer's?
Yeah. Well, if you think back in the 1950s, when someone had a cognitive problem,
Mm-hmm.
it was called senility or hardening of the arteries.
Mm-hmm.
We really didn't start to use the word Alzheimer's until it was there, I'm sure, but we didn't use it until probably the 70s into the 80s.
Right.
Lewy body dementia, while it's been around, did not actually come to the forefront with a name until the 1990s. So, what we're talking about, Nicole, bottom line is awareness. Who is aware? Lots of people had Alzheimer's. The name came out, people were associated with it. They gave money for research. Research happened, and now they're coming up with some pretty amazing discoveries. And I'm hoping that we'll get to a cure. Lewy body, on the other hand, is relatively new comparatively. It's been around, but we haven't known it by name. Now we know it by name. But when I started writing, I got two phrases consistently: Lewy what,
Mm,
and how do you spell that?
yeah.
And if you can't spell Lewy, Louis, you can't find it,
Right.
and you can't find help.
Right.
And that was the other thing. Finding help was very difficult. The neurologists, as brilliant as they were in diagnosis for us, I mean, we were very lucky. We got the diagnosis right out of the gate,
Mm,
but most people don't. Most people have to go back. It takes months and sometimes years to find the diagnosis, which is just heartbreaking
yeah.
because you're living with something and you don't know what you're living with and you don't know how to treat it.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
is there a cure? No, there's not. Is there a slowing it down? Not really. So right now, it's kind of grim, but there are ways that you can make life more meaningful while you're going through this. And that has to do with the way you approach it, the way you treat it. I think fear is another huge element here. When you're afraid, you clam up. And many people who are diagnosed with a dementia, as everybody knows, I think at this point, dementia is the umbrella. Off of the umbrella come all these spokes. So we have vascular dementia, we have Lewy body dementia, we have Alzheimer's, we have frontotemporal dementia, many more, but
Mm-hmm.
they all come off of this. So when someone is diagnosed with one of these, the fear, I'm sure, sets in for many people.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do is to cocoon. You just want to protect.
Right.
When we were diagnosed, and I say we because it is a we in this, we all get the diagnosis, even though one person has to endure it. And we had a conversation. And that conversation went as follows. I said, Nicky, would it be all right with you if we shared this diagnosis with people who were very close to us, our close friends and our family. And he said yes, for which I was very grateful
Mm,
because everybody's going to notice that things are a little bit off.
yeah.
And what they're going to do, and they don't mean this cruelly, but they're going to talk behind your back about it. And I didn't want that. I wanted it out front, and mercifully and happily, Nicky agreed with me. And so I would tell people before we would have see them for lunch or for a drink or for some lovely outing. I would tell them in advance what was going on. And I would also share how to best handle it if Nicky couldn't finish a sentence, or if he got lost in his thoughts, or if he fell asleep at the table. That happens too. And so I would share in advance so that no one was left feeling uncomfortable or inappropriate.
How helpful. You talk about how the different symptoms with that, and I know in your book you also talk about the tools and diagnosis. Can you elaborate about that just if people are listening and they go, okay, I don't necessarily know where to go for that support or help with the diagnosis? What tools are maybe available to us?
Right. The first thing I would tell someone to do if they suspect Lewy body is to go to a website of the Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center.
Mm,
And it is lbdny.org. This is a phenomenal resource because it's in many languages, for starters, which is important.
yeah.
It gives you information. It is pages and pages and pages of information about the disease. It's easy to navigate. It's a start. The Lewy Body Dementia Resource Center also has support groups that one can join. Support groups, if you are the person with Lewy body, they're called the crew, and
Oh,
support groups for the caregivers.
yeah.
They both happen twice a month for each. Zoom. Zoom works, and it's wonderful.
Right.
Also, in terms of if you suspect, you have to be diligent with this with doctors. Neurologists don't all get this. They don't all see it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that if you're a movement disorder specialist, you may see it. If you are a gerontologist, you may be very well positioned to see this.
Right.
But you, the person, the caregiver, has to, or the potential caregiver, has to ask the questions. You have to keep probing. When I first noticed things in the fall of 2016, and what I noticed were issues with anger, getting slightly angry. Nicky never got angry, especially not at me. A little suspicion was in there, suspicious of things, writing checks. He would take 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes to write one check. And the handwriting was getting smaller and smaller.
Mm,
These were little things that I thought, well, maybe he's tired. You can find excuses. We
right.
all can find excuses, right? And then we went to Vienna for the New Year's concert at the end of that year. And we were supposed to meet some friends for dinner at a restaurant that he knew well, I knew well. We weren't coming from the same place. We were coming from different locations in the city. And the restaurant was a block and a half from where we were staying. I got there 8 o'clock. By 8:45, other guests were there. Nicky wasn't there. He
Mm,
was always early or on time. I got totally frightened and excused myself, saying, I have to go and see if I can find him. Now, where in Vienna I thought I was going to find someone, I have no idea.
right.
But as fate would have it, I walked out, I walked one block, and I walked right into Nicky,
Mm,
which was a blessing.
mhm.
And I was very grateful. As I looked at him, what I saw in his eyes was fear. And I just knew something in me got very quiet. And I said, "Oh, Nicky, I'm so happy to have found you." And he looked at me and he said, "You didn't give me the address. You didn't write it down."
Mm.
And I said, "You're absolutely right. It's my bad. I should have done that and I didn't do it. Will you please forgive me?" That was the beginning of my seeing something that was really off,
Yeah.
not right.
Yeah.
From then on, I began to watch very carefully. And what happened is that shortly thereafter, when we came back stateside, he had had a physical every 6 months. He had a 6 month physical, and he said to our doctor, "Did you by any chance find the results from 6 months ago on that calcium score test you had me take?" And the doctor said, "Oh, yeah, let me look it up." Looked it up, turned white, and said, "Oh my gosh, Nicky, this score is off the charts in terms of how bad it is.
Wow.
You need to see a cardiologist. We need to do a stress test. We need to get you to a cardiologist." They did all of that. And the upshot of it was he needed triple bypass surgery. And with the surgery, I thought, well, that's what's wrong. That,
Oh.
of course,
Mm-hmm.
he's been, out of sorts, blood isn't getting to the head.
Yeah.
This is it. He had the triple bypass surgery. And the upshot of it was he didn't regain strength. He kept losing weight.
Mm.
The hallucinations that he had because of the anesthesia did not leave.
Mm.
We changed doctors about a year and a half later, and our new doctor took one look at what was going on and said, "Well, I'm going to watch this." Good. I suggested an MRI. He said, "Let's wait a little bit longer." By the fall of 2018, so now this is a year and a half later, I am seeing things that are just dreadfully wrong,
Yeah.
including we went to Stockholm, Sweden. This all sounds very glamorous. We're doing all
Oh,
this
the
traveling,
travel.
but it was frightening because when we got to the hotel, I knew I had made a huge mistake in having Nicky come with me. He was a guest, he was invited, and he wanted to come, but he couldn't find his way from the front desk of the hotel to our hotel room.
Mm.
He couldn't be left alone. He would sleep all day, but at night, we go back to those fluctuations that
Right.
I talked about. At night, it was like showtime, and that's what they call it.
Mm.
It's showtime. 100% Nicky, there, ready, totally with it. Nobody knew anything was wrong. From there, I went back to our doctor and I said, "Baseline MRI, please." He did it in the January of 2019. Baseline MRI was taken. It showed a phrase that I completely hate, which is age appropriate deterioration.
Interesting.
That to me is basically saying we don't know.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, what next? Because this isn't good enough." Because he had seen this in his own family, Lewy body dementia, sent us to the best neurologist he knew for this disease.
Wow.
The neurologist was brilliant. They did a cognitive test and watched him walk and said, "This is Lewy body dementia with Parkinsonian aspects."
Mm.
I was shocked.
Wow.
He said, "But we'll do a couple of verifications. We'll do a REM sleep test," which proved that he had REM sleep disorder, which he did, which, as I mentioned before, is one of the signs. He did a DAT scan, which showed that alpha synucleins, which are the Lewy bodies, were there. And from that, it supported. They don't say confirmed; they say
Right.
supported the diagnosis. And now we knew what it was.
And to have the clarity, as much as that clarity is so hard, how did you walk through that fear? Were there things or people or moments where you were able to make it through a little bit easier, as hard as it was?
Yeah. When I have fear, I count on my faith
Mm.
to take me through it.
Mm.
So my fear got dissipated. The more I could learn, the more I could understand, the more I could be that caregiver who didn't think about herself, but thought about put myself in the position of the other person. This must be frightening
Yeah.
for Nicky to one day not know who I am and the next day come back and know everything that's going on about this disease. When you look at it that way, your own fear goes to the side and you focus on what you need to focus on. Probably because I'd seen caregiving, I'd been part of it since I was 10.
Yeah.
I felt as if I'd had another chance
Mm.
to not make the mistakes I made as a child. A child says, I can make this happen. I can make this well. I'm going to do this.
Right.
The adult says, even when Nicky would say to me, I'm going to beat this, I wouldn't say, yes, you are, because at the moment, nobody beats it.
Right.
What I would say is, I know you're going to do the best you can.
Wow.
That was honest. I didn't want to dash his hopes, impossible hopes, but at the same time, I didn't want to tell an untruth.
Right. Right.
And give false hope.
Yeah.
The caregiver has to take care of himself or herself also. If something happens to you, the caregiver, what's going to happen to your loved one? That's
Not
really
able to
important.
care. It really is.
So, I mean, what your loved one wants to know is that they are loved, they are protected, they are taken care of.
Yeah.
That's what they want to know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to keep that calm in letting them know that.
Yeah. And in our conversation meeting you, I can see how your calming presence made a difference. It made a difference.
I actually will myself to be calm, but there were moments, and I will absolutely say it, that I would be on the verge of losing it. And I would go into another room and I would scream the F word
Yep.
into a pillow.
Yep.
And then I would take a lavender sachet and breathe like a yoga breath,
Right.
breathe very deeply, calm, put on the happy face, again, the calm face, and walk in and face the challenge.
Get it out. We
Yeah,
have to
you
have
have
those
to.
moments. We do.
You have to. And you will lose it. I mean, there are times you will lose it,
Yeah.
and you'll lose it in front of the person.
Yeah.
What you really do have to do is forgive yourself. None of us is perfect.
Yeah.
None of us can do it perfectly 100% of the time. It's just impossible.
It's impossible. We're
Right?
human.
We're human.
Yeah.
So when you lose it, forgive yourself. Also ask for forgiveness from the person that you've gone off on. It's important. The person who's dealing with Lewy body, that is, has the disease, or any dementia for that matter, they don't want this. They didn't ask for it. And they feel badly about the fact that they're putting you out.
Right.
I often would say, I mean, there are, there's incontinence, there's bowel incontinence, there's urinary incontinence, there's a whole raft of things that go with this. And the person will feel horrible about it. And I used to say, oh, please, that's what washing machines are for.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. It happens to all of us.
Right.
Because you just have to alleviate the guilt that they're feeling. And even when a person can't respond, you do get times when people are unable to talk, they're unable to communicate with you. Those moments happen, or it happens for long stretches of time. I believe that the person, your loved one, is there. They are feeling.
Yeah.
So don't make the mistake of thinking that they're so out of it that they don't hear you, or they don't feel your love, or they don't feel your anger. You've got to guard with those things. The love has to come through as much as it humanly can.
It does. It does. You share about how you had given advice, right, to your friends and family about how to maybe handle some of those situations, and
Yes.
your insight into that. There are unique challenges when you're caregiving for a loved one with Lewy body dementia specifically. How would you share with those of us that we could maybe learn a little bit more or navigate some of those more present, complex, as the term I like to use, quotes, like behavioral issues that present with Lewy body? I think that is a challenge, and I love that you were able to share with people how to handle different situations, or give them a little bit of insight if they don't fully know how to navigate that.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that for those who can accept what you're saying and be loving and kind and present, it's a gift.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a gift for them to be able to participate, and it's a gift for the caregiver to have that support, and it's a gift for the Lewy body person to know and feel that.
Yeah.
I will add one word of caution, and that is not everybody can go there.
Right.
Not everybody can accept it. And I had a lot of trouble at the beginning, especially with some family members who couldn't go there. They would find excuses for not being present. They would find excuses for not being able to come in and spend some time. It took me quite a while to understand that it isn't that they didn't want to, they couldn't.
Yeah.
There was a mechanism inside of those folks that wouldn't allow them to go there. And I had to find a way to just get past it. It took some doing. It
Right.
wasn't easy.
Right. Yeah. I've had conversation before with people where we lean into as a caregiver, right? I was a caregiver, and some people in our life aren't um, able to maybe be hands on, or the emotional side is hard for them. And finding ways, or acceptance, right? Acceptance of that there's that love, and they aren't able to engage in the ways that maybe we hope that they would. But whether it's someone managing, the financial side, but not being hands on, or setting up grocery delivery, but not talking about emotions, or whatever that is. I think
Right.
we learn about people in our lives as we caregive, and how they show up, and their emotional availability or lack thereof.
Yes. Yeah. I
Right?
think it's the emotional availability that I'm referencing most
Yeah.
most strongly.
Yeah.
Also, people will call and say, "What can I do?"
Mm.
We as caregivers aren't very prone to saying, "Oh, maybe you can cook a meal and deliver it." You
Right.
wouldn't do that. You just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But during the pandemic, I mean, we went through the worst of this during the pandemic, and Nicky died in July of 2020, which means the pandemic started in March of 2020. And people who were loving and kind
Mm.
wouldn't ask, "What can I do?" They would send a note. There is a fully cooked meal with your doorman waiting for you.
Wow.
There is a package coming from the delicatessen. They would just announce
Right.
that this was happening.
Yes.
It was such a gift. Or they would just call and say, "How are you?"
Mm.
Just "How are you?" That's it. Those are the things that as someone from the outside looking in who says, "What can I do?" You can be proactive.
Right.
That's what you can do.
Yeah.
You can send the note. You can make the phone call. 2 seconds. Not a long-winded thing, because we caregivers don't have the time to stay on the phone with you. I'm terribly
That's
sorry to
so
say.
true. Yeah.
Right. But we would love to hear the voice say,
Mm-hmm.
"How are you
Yeah.
doing?" And when the pandemic was not on, people would call and say, "May I come and visit Nicky?"
Mm.
And they would come, they'd know to stay 45 minutes, maybe an hour. They would come with homemade soup or something. It
Right.
was lovely.
Yeah.
But most important was the interaction
It is.
with Nicky,
Being
not with
present.
me, with
Yeah.
Nicky.
Yeah.
And
Being
that was
present.
important. That also gave me the opportunity to run out to the grocery store, get what was needed, things like that.
Right.
Of course, pandemic time, that was a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And I couldn't bring anyone in for it's time for a professional caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't do it because I'd heard the horror stories of what was happening with COVID and people bringing COVID into the homes. And I just didn't want to take that chance. And I was blessed with the energy and the strength to do it
To see it
to
through.
the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nikki passed in 2020, and that was the part of the book where I teared up when you talked about crawling into bed with him, and that you slept right next to him, and that moment. And thank you for sharing that in your book and bringing us into that story.
Yeah, I could. I felt that just holding hands,
Mm-hmm.
just that was so vital. that we did have dinner every night. I would get him up and into his transport chair and into the dining room and into a chair in the dining room. But I realized at a certain point that he couldn't get up by himself. And so I would go over and I would put my arms around him as if to give him a big hug and lift him. As far as he was concerned, I was hugging him.
Yeah.
I wasn't lifting him.
Yeah.
Again, the dignity.
Right.
Things like it would take Nicky 2 hours to get showered and dressed, but he could do it. And as long as he could do it, I mean, I'd peek around the corner, I admit, and just watch to make sure he was okay.
Right.
But I would encourage that activity because he could do it.
Yeah.
Anything that he could do that was not dangerous was a yes.
Right.
If it was dangerous, it was a no.
The dignity and that he could maintain the things that he could do until the end. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can't take that away. You know, it's I think it's cruelty to take away what somebody can do.
I agree.
And even when you say no, you know, you do it in a diverting way. It's not a hard no unless somebody's about to do something really
Right.
so
In the
dangerous, you know.
moment, yes.
But you divert, you know, you try to get them away from
Right.
what's dangerous.
Yes. Yes. There is hope and resilience and love and inspiration and challenge in sharing your story for others that might be on a similar caregiving journey. What would you share with them?
The one line that I would like indelibly put out there is, as a caregiver, you are not alone. You may feel like the only person on the planet sometimes, and that's a real feeling.
Yeah.
But in the second breath, please know you are not alone. There are people there to help you. There are those of us who care. That's why I wrote this book. If there's one message that gets through, it's that love and resilience will pull you through and you're not alone.
Thank you. Thank you for your commitment to sharing that and your honesty and sharing that love with us. Where can people find you or learn more and pick up your book, connect with you?
So you can go to my website, which is maryloufalcone.com. And there's probably more information you ever wanted to know, but there it all is. And also to buy the book if you wish. And I do think it's a helpful tool. I've been told it is. I feel it is, and I'm very grateful that it is. You can go to Amazon.com. That's probably the easiest and best way to find it. It gets delivered within a day. There's also an audiobook if you prefer to listen that way. And there is the Kindle version as well, or the ebook version.
Okay. Do you narrate the audio version?
I do.
Oh,
I read the
good.
audio version. Yes.
Oh, good.
It is my
Okay.
voice.
I love that. I love
So
that.
it's a very personal journey.
Yeah, I'm sure. You don't know this, but when I was at, early November at the Mayo Clinic, they had a brain health conference, and your book was featured when I was there. I don't know if you know that.
Well, how interesting, because I actually spoke on the 4th of November, let me just think, 2nd of November.
Okay.
I spoke at a palliative care conference for nurses at Mayo.
Oh, no way.
So I'm delighted to know that the book made it into the group that you were in.
It did. It did. There was a large gathering. I want to say we met, it might have been November 4th. It was a Saturday.
Yes,
Yes.
that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, because mine was on November 2nd, which was a Thursday.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So it was really fun because we had already scheduled our podcast together and I had read the book, and then to see it there and all the people that had knowledge of your work. So I thought that was really fun.
Oh, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. That means a great deal to me.
Oh, I'm so happy. I might have a
Thank you.
picture. I'll email it to you. I think I might have
Okay.
taken a picture.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. I want to thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story. And I am looking forward to staying in touch. So thank you for your time.
Please do. And thank you for everything that you are doing in this realm. Everybody who can contribute to awareness
Yeah.
is a step closer to funding, which is a step closer to cure.
Right.
And I do like to add, if there's anybody out there in celebrity land, families or individuals who are dealing with Lewy body dementia, please come forward, because Bruce Willis and his family did with frontotemporal, and it has made an enormous difference. Michael J. Fox has with Parkinson's. It's made an enormous difference. We need you to join us, please.
Thank you. We do. We do. And my favorite thing to say is, as a collective, right? When we raise our voices, we are a powerful force for good.
I'm with you 1,000,000%, Nicole. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening today. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe and give us 5 stars. In all honesty, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for listening to our episode.